All right, welcome back to our Workforce SHRM live stream here, live from the Exposition Hall at the SHRM 2018 Conference. Excited to have you back here, and I'm excited to have our final interview subject for the first day of SHRM here, Alex Alonso, the Chief Knowledge Officer at SHRM. So welcome and thank you for joining us, Alex.
Thank you, Mike. We really love having you here, and we're grateful that you're here, and I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, excellent. So I want to talk to you about the SHRM certifications, get an update on what's happening with the SHRM CP, SHRM SCP, and kind of how you see the market evolving for certifications, how it fits into it. So before we do that, a couple stats. Feel free to jump in if I get anything wrong here.
Sure.
Fourth year now for the SHRM CP, CSP, 112,000 certificate holders now.
That's correct.
Approximately 9,000 actually attending SHRM this week here in Chicago.
9,000 in Chicago, yep.
You're hoping to test, the goal this year is that you'll be testing 25,000 additional certificate holders. Yeah. You've got an ecosystem of providers, about 300 providers of education leading into the certification. 2,300 who are actually eligible to do recertification credits for certification. So obviously it's been a busy 4 years.
It has, there's no question about it.
The big change this year is you have a new president and CEO. And a new president and CEO who is a big advocate for SHRM certifications. He made a couple of statements from the main stage at the keynote talking about his own certification, the process of going through that certification. He's definitely a very enthusiastic leader and a supporter of the certifications. That's obvious so far. How has it been different having Johnny C. Taylor sort of be the champion? How has he helped champion and advocate for SHRM certifications?
Well, I'll share with you that it's interesting because we had a great champion before also in Hank Jackson, but with Johnny, he's lived the experience and he humanizes the experience, and it really brings to life what it is that people are experiencing themselves. And so we're seeing a great opportunity to kind of help personalize certification for individuals and really think more broadly about certification and professional development. And so we'll see, for instance, that there's quite a few examples where Johnny is thinking more broadly than just earning that credential and maintaining it. He's also thinking about how we help people along their career trajectory. How is it that SHRM plays a role in taking people from the day that they enter the profession or they're thinking about entering the profession all the way through to the day that they retire as a CHRO if they can. So that's the biggest difference. I think Johnny is thinking about that career arc all the way through, and in large part because he's lived it. He's experienced it, so to him it's very personal. And that's the one thing I see as a great difference.
Yeah, I'll get back to that in a minute, but you just came from, I think, a Smart Stage presentation about certifications?
I was doing a concurrent session on certification, and during that session what we were actually looking at was offering tips, test-taking tips for people who are interested in earning their credential. Because I find that demystifying the process really helps people kind of put them at ease in terms of what it's like to earn that credential, what it's like to become a certified professional, and we try to offer them guidance on things that they should avoid when thinking about those mental twists and those things that you're doing while trying to find the right answer on an item, right? You read an item that consists of 250 words, and some of it all seems like gobbledygook, but we try to demystify that so that people really can have a positive experience while testing.
Yeah, so let me ask you about, so it's been 4 years. I think the first year, obviously, there was a lot of perhaps confusion in the marketplace because you had the HRCI certifications and the SHRM certifications. How has the reaction evolved over the 4 years as you're talking to people who are going through the pathway, who are considering getting a SHRM certification? What's sort of the reaction that you're getting from the audience?
I'm so enthused by the audience and really with the reaction that I'm getting, in large part because people are seeing the value of a competency-based credential, and what they're really thinking about is what I kind of like to call evolving from the 4 little R's of HR Folly all the way to the big R's of HR Folly. And when we do some research with CEOs, we actually see that they're seeing a difference in people who are SHRM certified versus those that aren't. And what they really see is old HR, that's not the HR that you really think of. People focus on those little R's, and what are they? They're roles, rules, focusing on responsibilities, not really focusing on the big thing. So they're not really focusing on the big picture. When they look at a SHRM certified professional, they see something different. They see the 4 big R's, and those range from being resourceful, being results oriented, being somebody who can reimagine the workplace, and being someone who really uses reconnaissance, and they're thinking about data. They're thinking about the way that they can employ information to really reimagine the workplace and strive further as a business leader. And so the response from the business community has been superb, and we hear that over and over again about how there is just such a natural difference. People can see the big picture.
So yeah, let's stay on that point about the value of certifications. Sure. I know you've done some research. You presented to us yesterday during a press conference some of the top line statistics on what you're seeing, that people, the value that people are finding in it, what you're finding. So maybe give us a little high level view of that.
I'd be happy to. It's interesting. I try to package these in a couple different ways. So I think about what it means to the individual when they're thinking about value, and for individuals, I try to think about what really is an intrinsic motivator versus an extrinsic motivator. And you'll see that individuals, for an example, will have greater career attitudes. They'll see a greater satisfaction with their learning trajectory, so much so that people who hold a SHRM credential are 74% more likely to have a greater understanding of their learning and really like their learning trajectory. They also see that they have greater understanding of leadership behaviors. About 58% of leaders say that they have a greater understanding of what leadership behaviors they need to be engaged in. And then most interestingly is things like extrinsic motivators like pay. I really care about pay, I'm like anybody else. And so when we look at it, you're 21% more, you're much more likely to make about 21% more than someone who doesn't hold a SHRM credential. So that's a big difference in people's lives. When you think about it, that's $17,000 more. Or you're more likely to make about $17,000 more if you hold an SCP, and if you hold a CP, it's about $5,500 more. So it makes a difference in people's lives. Yeah.
So let's talk about assessments.
Okay.
So Johnny from the main stage yesterday made a few lighthearted comments about his own process of going through and getting certified.
Yeah.
I think he said something like, usually the usual test taking strategy is if you don't know the answer to the question, skip it, come back to it. He said when he got to question 6, he realized he had already skipped over 5 questions.
Yeah.
So everybody sort of likes to complain about assessments.
Sure.
And, likes to complain that these test makers and they don't know. They don't know the business.
Sure.
This is entirely different from the practical aspects of doing HR. What are you doing to evolve the assessment model, and what do you see as the future of assessment for SHRM certifications?
So, it's interesting. I like to tell a joke that is, you don't go into testing to make friends, right? And I've been in testing for 20 years and I don't have any friends left. But what's most interesting is people do have that trepidation. They do run into those issues around test taking, and test taking can be very tricky. And I was actually enthused by Johnny's kind of lighthearted approach to it, in large part because, one, he validated the seriousness of the exam, and his experience has been one where he felt that it really challenged him, and that's what we want to do. We don't want to make it so easy that people don't feel challenged and see no value in it. But by the same token, there is great value in it because you're learning from the process. And to me, that learning experience is the most critical thing. But we seek to evolve the testing experience because we want to serve as many people as possible and be as accessible as possible. So in the future, we're going to be evolving into things like video-based situational judgment exams, so that we're asking people to actually immerse themselves in a simulation.
So you're documenting in a way that they actually can apply this.
Yes, exactly. And then we're also doing a greater emphasis on what we've done from the beginning, which is really involving real life HR professionals in the assessment development from the beginning to the end. And we're doing extra layers of validation on the back end to ensure that we're capturing real life world experiences, which is really what we want. So, so we're looking to evolve the program as much as possible to really make it as accessible and help people have a positive testing experience.
All right. So just real quickly, talking about accreditation, you gave us an update on the accreditation process for the SHRM certifications. Can you kind of give us our audience out here is watching a sense of what's happening with accreditation? Obviously, it's 4 years. It seems like a long time, but in the accreditation world, that's actually not that long of a time.
No, it is not. In fact, one of the questions that I field all the time is, are you seeking out other accreditations? Are you seeking global accreditations? And the answer is we're always seeking global accreditations. In particular, what we're looking at, though, is that you have to have a series of operations and an extensive record of operations before you can seek those. That said, we've earned one of the highest standards in the world of testing, that is the Burroughs accreditation. And we started with stage 1, which said, this is the program outline, this is the way we approach testing, this is the way that we operate. And we laid out our specifications for all that. And then what happened is we achieved that accreditation and had a second stage which says on a yearly basis, you're going to commit to living to that operational protocol, and you're going to commit to that specification, and you're going to do what you say you do. And we submit a report every year indicating that you do that. There is no other accreditation program in the world that does that. Every other one does it either 5 or 10 years. We do it every year because we want to commit.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about competition in the market. So I think I want to touch on competition from 3 different areas. Let's start with looking at it from a professional development standpoint. How does getting a SHRM certification fit with maybe, or how do you see it fitting with other professional development opportunities? So why would I, if I'm a HR professional looking to up my game, why would I choose to go the SHRM certification route when maybe I could spend my time getting an MBA, going a higher education route? What do you see as the advantage in those cases?
So in many cases, what we're seeing is that there's a complementary nature, right? There's a compensatory nature that exists with the SHRM certification and an MBA or some other kind of credential. And what we're seeing specifically is that an MBA will give you a lot of the book learning that you need, and will give you a lot of the preparation you need, but an experiential credential like the SHRM CP or the SHRM SCP will really provide you with a stamp that you've lived the experiences necessary to do that. Now, when I think about this kind of the way that we approach this, whether it be through higher ed, other credentials, what we see is that there is a great trend in professional development that says that people are trying to stack as many different kind of components and learning and competencies as much as possible. So when we think about competency-based education and the way people are approaching their development, we view this as something that gives them a great foundation, but also supports their development or adoption of other credentials. And so we're very much interested in trying to partner with other groups to ensure that we're doing as much as possible to help people develop themselves for the customized work that they have to do.
Okay. All right, so then let's talk about SHRM CP, SHRM SCP, HRCI, PHR, SPHR. There's, 4 years ago when you launched certification, there was already a big player in the market, that being HRCI. How do you see SHRM certifications stacking up against the PHR and SPHR, which have been around for quite a while?
Sure. Well, I can't speak to other credentials. I won't speak to other credentials, but I will say that what we're seeing when we receive market feedback is there are 2 things that really stand out. One is the competency-based approach is really geared more towards not just somebody's development as an HR professional, but rather as a business operator. The competencies that we highlight in our competency model and in our certification are all geared very much towards the business leadership model and layer on beautifully to other different kinds of careers. In addition, we're also seeing that the job relevance associated with these credentials is just through the roof compared to other credentials. And so I would argue that when we think about the SHRM CP and the SHRM SCP, it really is the real world experience and the fact that it's developed by HR professionals that makes a big difference.
Okay. All right, so one last point, HRCI. Any plans to kind of get together again? Is there anything on the table?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to answer that. I think that's up to our leadership.
Up to your new president and CEO to determine what the relationship looks like going forward. All right, last point on competition. I want to ask about competition for time and attention. There is I think it's pretty indisputable. We have a fragmented attention, and your people who are pursuing certifications are no exception to that rule. They might not have the patience to go through a very long certification process. So I know you've launched some micro credentials and some more targeted credentials. Talk us through some of the options that you're exploring there.
So we're exploring several options, and in fact, it speaks both to our learning business as well as to our certification business. When we think about credentialing, we're actually offering a portfolio of different credentials that are targeted towards various specialties. And so this year we launched something that dealt with specifically with California employment law. We're on track to launch one on talent acquisition, and we've got 2 others in the playbook that deal specifically with HR analytics as well as talent analytics, and then another one that deals with global talent mobility. But we're building a portfolio that allows people to really stack their specialty and really focus on their core, most relevant kind of expertise that they need to acquire. But that's not where we're stopping. We're actually looking in partnership with PMI as well as with AICPA PMI being the Project Management Institute, and AICPA being the Institute for Certified Professional Accountants. And what we're looking at specifically is the way that, as a group, we're looking at the way that people do their learning and really offering bite-sized learning. So we're doing micro-learning and exploring that, such that you might be able to develop yourself or develop some learning in an 8-minute chunk or a 15-minute chunk. We're also looking at the way that we offer new kind of nano-learning opportunities based upon a quick read or something that you do in your spare time at work. So we're really trying to make sure that we're cognizant of this trend that people learn in bite-sized approaches, and we're trying to do things in partnership with some of our other industry leaders to make sure that we're offering the best possible content in those spaces.
Yeah. So speaking of attention for time, we're at the end of the day. Okay. So I appreciate you taking time to, at the end of what's been a busy day, to share an update on SHRM certification. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Appreciate you taking time to tune in for our Workforce live stream. We'll be back tomorrow morning, so be sure to come back and check out our interviews tomorrow. Thanks again.